Good day, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about two topics. One, the NEV insurance data coming out today, and also this, in my point, very big deal between NIO and CATL. Today I'm making it quite easy, not my own charts. I'm using CNEV Post, which, by the way, you can see here. It's made by a Chinese author, and he is back in his hometown from January 13th. So this is explaining why there is less content for him currently. And I'm saying this because this is kind of giving the whole context here already for the insurance registrations right now. So we have to consider that China basically is already in some sort of New Year celebrations. It depends. Some people are going home. Most people are going home elsewhere. So this is a huge, travel occasion. And during that time of the year, it's quite quiet in terms of sales because not many people are caring about shopping. They're rather caring about going out, meeting their family, maybe going to a restaurant, similar stuff like Christmas. And this is kind of the broader context, and this additionally to the cyclical nature of automotive and also the seasonal nature, expect Q1 just to be quite quiet, I should say. So first off, I think we have to talk about Tesla first here, which in the second week has now registered 12,654 license plates. So remember, what was it last week? Was it around 2,000 only? So a big gap up here by Tesla, also reflecting in the share price today. Was it to be expected? Yeah, kind of. Although I should say, I already pointed out in my last video that it's not surprising to see low numbers in the first weeks of a quarter, not only because of the context that I just gave with Chinese New Year and with the celebrations and everything, and by the way, also the COVID wave, but also because Tesla is usually exporting in the first week, so sending off all of those ships overseas from Shanghai. And so this is, I think, why this number is actually quite big in this regard. My suspicion here is that they had some inventory going into Q1, which they didn't sell in the last couple of weeks, mainly actually due to some missing demand here, to be frank, and some order missings. We've discussed this in length here on the channel and on other news channels, but now, with their rebates and price decreases, it seems they were able to quickly, sell available vehicles. Now, I think this might still mean that maybe the next coming weeks, the numbers might not look that pretty for Tesla. Simply because, again, they are focusing right now on exports, and they may not have the priority right now to make those domestic deliveries. On top of that, as I mentioned, it's quite a quiet quarter and particularly a quiet month. So maybe they've done this little bit of prioritization now to quickly get out those inventories, and also maybe also a little bit to please Wall Street here, which was a success, I would say. Then for the other companies here, unfortunately this graph is a little bit blurred here, but for NIO, you might be interested, of course, 2,974 vehicles being registered. This is close to BMW. I have to say this is quite interesting because that for me would be the benchmark here, because they are in a similar price segment. As I'm always preaching on this channel, don't compare a NIO to a Tesla right now, a BYD, and also not to a XPeng, which only delivered 1,817 cars. So XPeng clearly here is in a sort of a almost existential crisis, I would say, given the fact how cheap the cars are by sticker price. They should be selling way more cars than this, that's for sure. And there is, the question like how they will actually survive going forward. The good thing is they have a good balance sheet in terms of lots of cash at hand. So they have maybe not only one try, but maybe 2 or 3 attempts to kind of rescue the business here. Let's see how they can do in the future. Seeker, 1,359 deliveries. This is actually for them a relatively low number, and that's actually a Geely brand. Also Aito, very, very low number. They have been selling huge numbers before. It's one of the more hidden Chinese brands. And what is it telling you is basically what I mentioned before, this context of that this is not a hot season, and frankly, that the economic recovery takes possibly much more time, as actually outlined by, for example, Li Auto and NIO CEO or management, who mentioned that. Li Auto doing quite well here. However, I should once again stress the fact that this is not an EV, so it's kind of confusing to see them up in this list, in my point of view. And also, of course, it's a more affordable option. So it makes sense that this is a good selling car, because it's very pragmatic to buy such a big family car if you need one. Because for one, it's affordable, and second of all, it's not, you don't need to make this jump into the EV world, because you can still rely on gasoline and filling up your tank and have a range extender there. So that's my commentary around these numbers for NIO. I should say they are pretty much in line with my expectations. I mentioned like this is going to be not a great quarter or month. That's I would say going forward, the next couple of weeks might also be low and slow. We'll see. But I shouldn't say that 3,000 cars a week are actually quite low, to be honest. Maybe have a look at the composition of these. So this is the actual original source, which shows me that NIO has prioritized. So these are the weekly sales. It's all in Chinese, but 70% of those registered license plates have been from the ET5. And I think this would actually make sense in terms of that they have possibly still those undelivered ET5 at hand, kind of also similar to Tesla inventory that they have brought from the last year, which they couldn't deliver because of the logistics of supply chain issues. They have been produced. We know that they had 300,000 cars rolling off the production line. So I think in production they have highly prioritized the ET5, and it also makes sense for them actually to bring them into the hands of customers now that also Tesla has cut prices, because most other NIO models shouldn't be too affected by Tesla's price cuts, as they are in a different league in terms of the first of all the hardware and the car, but also in terms of pricing mainly. And for the ET5, it was kind of closer price to the Model 3 actually, right? So that's what I mentioned before. You really want to get a first feeling now, like are there sales being taken away from the Model 3 price cuts now to the ET5? My argument would still be that those who really want the ET5 in terms of what it's offering, and in my point of view, it's offering the latest hardware, a very well-designed interior, very young, very sleek. So those customers, I think, are unlikely to cancel a NIO ET5 order and switch to the Model 3. However, there might be some price-conscious, undecided customers who now see a special deal in the Model 3 and say, it's all right for me to have this perceived, from a Chinese perspective, perceived much older model there, right? So, that's maybe behind also this big share of ET5 orders here. However, we also need to, of course, recognize that there might be, for example, issues with the old models, the NT 1.0 models here, the ES8, EC6 going to be phased out. So going forward in the next couple of months, we'll see how many they still manage to sell from these older models. Anyways, now back to the second news, which is NIO and CATL signing a deal involving cooperation on new brands and products. So for me, this is a big deal, and I'm telling you why. First of all, a little bit of a context. So CATL is already cooperating with NIO in a regard that they have a share in the battery asset management company. So this company holds the batteries that are in the swapping stations. So they are on a separate company in which CATL has invested. So there are no new friends per se, but rather old friends by now. And so that's not the first touch point between CATL and NIO. However, it's coming, in my point of view, at a surprising point in time, because there have been rumors around the fact that CATL is using, they're the biggest battery manufacturer, and they're using their pricing power, their monopoly, if you will. It's not really a monopoly, but their big power in the market to really dictate prices. And there have been complaints by some of the EV companies. And interestingly, also NIO showed the first steps. There have been meetings, for example, with BYD, which supposedly were around batteries. NIO is diversifying themselves by starting their own battery production as well, in terms of having the hybrid solid state battery, the 150 kilowatt hour battery, with a new company called Wheeline, in which NIO has also invested in. And they are also in talks with other Chinese lesser known battery manufacturers, and there are new NIO models. I think the ES8, the first one which I heard, that also has in the MIAT description. So this is kind of the official registry. If you bring out a new car, you have to register it with the authorities to get the license granted to start selling it. And in there you find also CABL, I think is the short form for this other Chinese manufacturer. So you would possibly think that there is some issues going on in the EV industry and potentially also between NIO and CATL. However, today's news is actually quite to the contrary. So you see here Li Bin as well as the CEO of CATL shaking hands. And it's interesting, this new partnership, let me see what's in this article, what it is all about. I frankly haven't read this article so far. I only read the Chinese original. All right, here it is. It will involve coordination of supply and demand, overseas business expansion. Very interesting. And cooperation in business models based on long-life batteries. That's also interesting. And also for new brands, projects, and markets. So now you already possibly also know that CATL has started their own battery swapping. What's the name again? EVgo, I think, and with the chocolate bars. So the batteries have this distinct feature that they can be they are modularized and they can fit it in different sizes. So either you have just one of those chocolate chips in there, and then you have, like, let's say 50 kilowatt hour, or you have a larger pack that consists of 3 of them. And so we saw quite some similar looking swap stations there by CATL, and the question was always like, will they take away some business from NIO, right? And what does it say about this other investment by CATL in NIO's battery asset management company? There have been question marks, black boxes around this. I always saw CATL heading into battery swapping as a let's say, a confirmation that another very big player in the battery business, and they should know the battery business, is interested in this business model. To me, that was a big sign that there is a buy-in by the industry. So the only question was like, how will this, for example, affect NIO going forward? And now we know that NIO is also planning to have sub-brands, at least two. Let's say maybe one of them more in the 100,000 to 200,000 RMB segment. And now that they are talking here about new brands, new projects, and new markets, is telling me that actually CATL might be involved in actually this new mass market brand of NIO. And this might be interesting then, because possibly this might be a compatibility between CATL, EVgo, battery swapping, and NIO mass market brand, which kind of would make sense. And I made also some earlier videos about some of NIO patents that also shown like modularized batteries, something very similar to this chocolate bar battery that was announced by CATL. And it kind of would also fit to the, think about it. If NIO is coming out with a new brand, that's obviously not a NIO brand, but it's owned by NIO. It doesn't really matter if the battery swap station is branded differently, right? And it doesn't really matter if the battery swap station is open to other brands as well, right? So NIO could use their own battery swap station network for NIO only, kind of a, if you're part of the battery swapping elite here and you can only swap it at those stations where you have preferential access and less people queuing, and because you're a NIO owner, right? But then there might be those CATL swap stations too that might either be even compatible with the current NIO models as well, or else they are just for the CATL NIO new projects here that are announced here. What's also interesting is their coordination for business expansion and cooperation in overseas markets. So CATL, for example, is building a new facility in Germany and also in Hungary, actually not far away from the Hungary plant where NIO builds its battery swap stations and charging piles. So there seems to be some overlap. I noticed, for example, in the past also how the meetings with the government in Hungary were followed just, I think, between 1 week between CATL and NIO executives, and basically in the same room meeting the same people. So there seem to be some behind the scenes overlappings going on already, and this kind of seems to be the formalization of it in a way. And of course, it helps a small and new company like NIO as a startup if one of those really big players like CATL is going hand in hand with them into new markets, but also helping to facilitate not only EVs but also battery swapping possibility in possibly in China. So that's why I think this partnership, against this context that actually CATL was currently seen as kind of misusing those EV players, and now NIO comes in and strikes a deal with them, is quite a big message in my point of view, and it should help NIO tremendously and takes out quite a bit of risk of NIO's new ventures here with the mass market brand and also with their overseas expansions. In my point of view, I mean, that's just rough guessing for now, because we don't have the full picture yet. If you're wondering what are my thoughts about it, these are my thoughts. These are my initial reactions around it, how I see this deal going forward benefiting the companies. Then also this sentence about long life batteries. I think this is another hint around battery swapping, because one of the benefits of battery swapping is, of course, that you can slowly charge the batteries instead of supercharging it all the time, and also recycling of batteries is much easier, right? Because you basically have a more open loop in which you can churn out lemons and bring in new batteries, and you can recycle them more easily, in contrast to if your battery is, for example, glued to the car, right? So another hint where potential projects could be in the future here. So that's why this was kind of out of the blue, quite a surprise to me. We'll see how this might result in more formal announcements going forward. For example, when NIO launches their mass market brand, and potentially some projects overseas. Yeah, that's it for now. Maybe there's more to tell in future videos. If you like this as information, then please smash the thumbs up. Help me to share this video in some investor channels or people passionate about EVs in China and with NIO. And yeah, you can always help us by subscribing to the channel, subscribing to our Patreon, follow me on Twitter at _mm85. And that's it for now. Thank you guys for watching. See you in the next video.